In this video, I'm going to try to cover how to replace the speed controller on the Fang motor. The speed controller is right here. I'm going to start by removing this chain guard. Okay, now that I've got the chain guard off, I should use a 3mm hex wrench or Allen wrench. I'm going to actually remove the speed controller. It's the same 3mm. The speed controller has the entire wire harness connected to it. So when it is replaced, we're going to need to snip all these zip ties and all the wires that are going through the speed controller and up through the bracket here and into the case. In order to access all those wires, we'll undo these 4 bolts right here and pull this off so that we can see. So now that I got that lid off, I can start unplugging all the wires that are in here. One thing you should do is make sure you remove the battery and then hold down the power button on your display to try to drain any residual power. There's some capacitors inside that speed controller and they'll hold power. So as long as that's turned on, then it'll drain. Okay, the next step, we're going to remove the spider ring, which also holds that chain ring in place. So I'm going to take the chain off for this and just get it out of the way. And then there's these 5 bolts that need to be removed. Okay, with all 5 of those bolts taken off, that chain ring can come and just slide down and rest on the crank there. Next, I'm going to remove this plastic cover that is covering up the gear and has some grease underneath it. There's 7 Phillips heads that you need to remove with a screwdriver. I'm using a number 2 screwdriver, which is the most common. So we'll take all those off and then we can take that plate off. All right, with that last screw out, I can carefully remove this cover, and it can also just hang and rest there. Now we can get the speed controller off. Once you've broken that seal and this can move, the E-kit bracket is going to slightly be in the way. So this leg right here that holds the chain guard needs to be slightly bent. The aluminum that it's made out of is 5052. It can be bent back and forth. So we're okay bending it a little bit so that then that. All right, now that I have that loose and I have all my wires pulled through, the wires are pretty tight through these grommets, but they'll all fit if you just take your time and work them through. The very last wire that you should pull through is the speed sensor because it's the fattest. So that would be get everything else through first after you've cut the zip ties. And then we can pull that speed controller off inside. Let me actually zoom in here. Okay, you've got 3 wires with bullet plug terminals, the green, yellow, and blue. One of those may have come unplugged, which would also give you that air 30. So check all of these first, make sure that all the connections are on. If one is unplugged, you can plug that back in and try it and see if that air goes away. Otherwise, we're going to replace the whole speed controller. So these can all be unplugged. What's the hardest part about this is digging out that white plug. So these bullet plugs come undone fairly easy. Same with the black plug. The last is to take out that white plug. It's buried underneath this silicone for waterproofing. So I'm going to dig that out very carefully with a small screwdriver until I can pull that out. All right, now that I've dug out that plug, you can take a look at the new plug to see how that works. I always make sure with the red wire on the top that to the left of it is the lever I need to squeeze with my thumb to get that pulled out. And then to get everything back together, it's just the exact opposite in reverse. When we plug that white plug back in, we just need to make sure that we put some silicone back on that place, back in that same spot. That's just any 100% silicone by at Home Depot or Lowe's or any home improvement place, clear or white. Just comes in a little squeeze tube. And once it's plugged in first, and then squeeze some of that silicone around. That's the main connection that needs to be silicone shut. And then it's feeding the wires back through and tying everything back together with some zip ties.